At my brother's birthday dinner, Grandpa stared straight past the chandeliers and crystal glasses and asked me, "Is the $5,000 I send you every month enough?" My throat went dry. I blinked and said the only honest thing I could. "Which money?" The room didn't just go quiet, it went lifeless. My mother's fork slipped from her fingers and hit the plate like a gunshot. Grandpa's cane came down on the marble floor with a crack that made everyone flinch. Then he said one sentence that turned my family into strangers in real time. "My name is Caius Rowe. I'm in my early 30s, and I never thought I'd say this out loud, but I've been made poor by the people who were supposed to protect me. Before I tell you everything, can you please comment hi or tell me where you're watching from?" Sometimes just knowing someone is there makes it easier to keep going. And if stories like this matter to you, please subscribe, not for drama, but so I don't have to feel like I'm speaking into an empty room. Thank you. Now, let me tell you everything. I got off work with a numb spine, sticky palms, and the kind of exhaustion that doesn't go away with sleep. The warehouse lights had already been dimmed by the time I clocked out. The forklift beeps faded into the distance, replaced by silence and the dry hum of heat radiating from cracked asphalt. Another night shift done. Another morning where my bed would feel less like rest and more like retreat. I pulled out my phone and saw a message from my mother, Celeste. "Dinner's at 7. Don't be late. And Caius? Wear something decent this time." There was always a tone in her messages that made them sound like orders, even when they were dressed as reminders. I didn't respond. What could I say that wouldn't come off either defiant or pathetic? I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat of my car, which groaned in response like it hated the weight. The drive home was short, but my mind stretched it out. I passed by strip malls with neon vacancy signs, closed fast food windows, and billboards advertising accident attorneys and discount mattresses. It was West Phoenix, at its most honest, dry, sun-faded, and always a little tired. I thought about the envelope taped to my fridge, my rent bill 2 weeks overdue. The mechanic's estimate for the misfire in my engine still sat unopened in my glove compartment. I already knew the number by heart, $870. No chance I was fixing it this month. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex in Tempe, my stomach was churning more from anxiety than hunger. The door stuck like always, and the hallway light flickered overhead as I walked in. I changed into a plain navy button-down and the only pair of jeans I had that didn't look like they'd been through a war. I stood in front of the mirror above the sink, brushing down the collar like it mattered, like it would change something. I opened my wallet just enough for gas to get there and back. That was all. No coffee on the way, no grabbing food later, not even a bottle of water from a gas station. I told myself the same thing I always did before seeing them. Don't ask for anything. Don't argue. Just survive the night. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time someone would ask how I've been and actually wait for an answer. But the memory reel started playing before I even stepped out the door. 3 months ago, I called my mom asking for help with rent. She told me, "Caius, you need to grow up." 2 months ago, I asked again, this time after a week of eating dry cereal and skipping dinner shifts because of back pain. She said, "You always make things dramatic." Last month, I didn't even finish the sentence. She hung up mid-call and sent a text. "Don't bring this up today. Beckett's pitching investors. He doesn't need distractions." Those words weren't just dismissals. They were erasers, scrubbing out any need I had and painting it as a nuisance. I remembered something Dad said a long time ago when I once asked him directly for help. "If your grandfather wants to support you, it needs to go through us. That's how we keep it clean." Clean. That word stuck with me. Nothing about our family ever felt clean. It felt curated, sanitized, packaged. I also remembered a comment Beckett once made when he thought I wasn't paying attention. "Don't worry, the family's backing me. I'm good." At the time I brushed it off as ego. Now it came back with teeth. I got in my car and turned the key. The engine sputtered before catching. I held my breath like that would help, like the car could feel my desperation and respond with mercy. It didn't. The engine rattled all the way down the I-10 like a reminder that even the machines in my life were on their last legs. As I turned into the gated neighborhood of Paradise Valley, the air changed. It always did here. The trees were too symmetrical, the streets too smooth, the homes too sterile to feel real. My family's house was at the far end of the cul-de-sac where the lights glowed warm and gold like a stage ready for the next act. I pulled up and parked across the street, not in the driveway. The message was always the same: don't block the guests. As I stepped out and adjusted my shirt one last time, I caught the scent of grilled steak and aged wine wafting through the air. Familiar, expensive, and never meant for me. I walked toward the door like a man walking into court, knowing the verdict was already written, hoping at most for a lighter sentence. I told myself, just make it through the night. I didn't know that before dessert was served, my entire family's story would split down the middle. Celeste was waiting at the entrance of the dining room like a bouncer guarding a club she didn't think I belonged to. She didn't smile. She didn't hug me. She just looked me over like a disapproving tailor and said, "Caius, sit at the far end, near the kitchen door." She pointed without making eye contact, then turned back toward the room as if placing furniture. I walked past a long mahogany table set with fine china, gold-rimmed crystal and silverware so polished it reflected the chandelier light like tiny daggers. At the head of the table sat Beckett, my brother, dressed in a tailored navy blazer and smirking like he was the main attraction, which in this house he always was. I didn't expect anyone to stand or greet me. Still, something about walking that stretch to the end of the table while everyone else avoided eye contact made me feel more like a waiter than a guest. As I passed behind Maris Beckett's wife, she leaned slightly without turning her head and whispered, "Don't make a scene this time." Her voice was syrupy as always, sweet but sticky. I didn't answer. I knew how this game worked. I took my seat next to the swinging door where the kitchen staff came and went. The seat cushion was thinner, like it knew it was meant for someone less important. Dad stood at the far side of the room, shaking hands with a man I vaguely recognized as someone Beckett once tagged in a photo from a charity gala. Beckett was already telling a story about how his startup just closed its latest round, raising mid-seven figures. Maris beamed beside him like she'd written the check herself. Mom has always played conductor. She adjusted napkins and candles, moved wine glasses half an inch for symmetry, all while throwing glances around the room to make sure the Rowe family appeared perfectly poised. When everything was arranged just right, she finally gave a satisfied nod, sat down, and smiled at her guests. Maris raised her glass. To Beckett, she said, the most successful man in the family. Everyone lifted their glasses. The room rang with toasts and careful laughter. I didn't lift mine. I looked down at the glass of water in front of me and watched the way the light trembled on its surface. Then came the voice I'd almost forgotten could command silence. "Caius," said Aunt Jolene from 2 seats down, the kind of voice that pretended to care but always hunted for something to twist. "How have you been, I heard? Well, someone mentioned you've been a little unstable lately." My fork paused halfway to the plate. I blinked. Unstable. I repeated too softly for anyone but her to hear. She smiled quickly, the kind of expression people use when they've realized they said too much but don't want to admit it. I looked around. No one else seemed surprised. That was when it hit me. This wasn't a stray rumor. This was something circulated, rehearsed. I didn't say anything. Because if I did, they'd say I was being sensitive, dramatic, just like Mom always said. And then came the final twist of the knife. I overheard Dad talking quietly to one of the guests near the wine rack. "Caius. No, he doesn't do well with managing money. Thankfully, we've been keeping things stable for him. It's better that way." He said it like a kindness, like he was protecting me. I wasn't angry in that moment. I was stunned. They weren't just ignoring me. They were rewriting me. Making me into someone who couldn't be trusted with my own life so that if I ever asked for help again, people would already have a reason not to believe I deserved it. I sat back in my chair, feeling my pulse behind my eyes, watching the ice in my glass melt. I couldn't win. If I spoke up, I'd be unstable. If I stayed quiet, I was grateful. They had me boxed in. Then Grandpa Thaddeus walked in. The room straightened itself immediately. Postures lifted. Voices softened. Even Maris sat up a little straighter. Grandpa moved slow, but his presence filled the space faster than any entrance I'd ever seen. His cane tapped once on the floor, echoing like a gavel. He didn't say a word. Not yet. He scanned the table, his eyes resting briefly on each person before landing hard on me. He looked at me longer than anyone else. And then he sat. Silence returned. The kind that comes before something important. After dessert was served, after glasses refilled, he tapped his cane once more. Just once, not loud, but enough. "Caius," he said, steady and clear in front of everyone. My throat tightened. He was about to say something that wasn't part of my mother's script. And for the first time that night, I knew something was coming that might finally break their perfect performance. The room didn't creak. It didn't shift or stir or gasp. It shattered in silence. Grandpa Thaddeus's voice cut through the polished air like a blade. "Is the $5,000 I send you every month enough, Caius?" My brain paused like it tripped on a step that shouldn't be there. The question was so bizarre, so out of place with the wine-poured small talk and half-laughed stories that I didn't even have time to fake a smile. I responded with the only thing that came to me. Which money? The sound of my mother's fork slipping from her hand and crashing onto her china plate was louder than anything said all night. Someone cleared their throat, a nervous tick that echoed louder than intended. A glass clinked from a tremble. Beckett's grin disappeared instantly. His hand frozen mid-gesture, eyes locked on me like he just realized the script had changed. Grandpa didn't blink. "The money I've sent you every month. Like clockwork. On the first of each month. For over 2 years now." My throat closed, but I made myself speak. "I haven't received a single cent, sir." The weight of that confession flattened the air in the room. I wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't crying. I didn't need to. The silence screamed loud enough. "I've never seen that money. I've never been told to expect it. I work 2 jobs. I eat rice and eggs most nights. My car rattles every morning like it wants to quit. If I had $5,000 a month, don't you think I'd know?" Eyes turned toward me. Some were confused. Others were watching my family, the real show. Because whatever illusion this family had spent years crafting just cracked wide open in front of half of Paradise Valley. Celeste, my mother, recovered first. Of course she did. Well, she said, her voice calm, the way people speak to animals who might bite. "Caius has always been forgetful. He's emotional, prone to these outbursts. You know how artists are." "I'm not an artist, Mom. I meant in temperament, sweetheart," she said quickly. "Sometimes you get overwhelmed." Her tone was honeyed, but her eyes were razor wire. She wasn't explaining. She was spinning, crafting the narrative before it escaped her grasp. "I haven't been overwhelmed," I said slowly. "I've been broke. I've been tired. I've been shut out. But I've never forgotten receiving $5,000 a month because it never happened." Grandpa didn't say a word, but his jaw tightened. That was enough. "I've sent it," he said again, firmer this time. "Direct transfers. Same account, same name. Every month. I have receipts, and I have none," I said. "No bank alerts, no deposits, no sign of any help. Just me and my hands and 30-year-old knees unloading pallets at 3 a.m. Dad spoke then too quickly. "We just thought, well, sometimes you miss things, Caius. We've tried to guide you," but Grandpa raised his hand. The room snapped back into silence. Then slowly he stood. It was a deliberate motion. He leaned on his cane as if making sure the moment couldn't be missed. The thump when it hit the floor echoed like a judge's gavel in a courtroom. No one dared to move. If Caius never received the money, Grandpa said, voice low but carrying, then someone else in this family has been taking it. He let that sentence hang in the air like a sentence delivered. "I will not let this be buried. Not under candles or steak or speeches about family legacy." He turned his head slowly, deliberately, until his eyes met Celeste's, then Dorian's. Their postures changed barely, but I saw it. A stiffness in their spines, a twitch in Dad's hand. Maris didn't breathe. Beckett's jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. Explain it. Grandpa said, his voice still flat but with a note of something sharp beneath. Right now. And just like that, the party turned into something else. This wasn't a birthday anymore. This was a trial. My father opened his mouth like he'd been practicing the speech for years, but the words wouldn't come. My mother inhaled sharply, gathering herself, her voice sliding into that familiar, even tone that always worked so well with her charity club and Facebook Live cooking classes. There's no need to dramatize this, she said. We've always done what's best for Caius. Sometimes that meant making decisions he wasn't ready to understand. I almost laughed. Decisions, I asked, like intercepting money meant for me. She flinched just slightly. That money was managed. Because you've never been good with finances, Caius. You forget things. You ignore bills. You ask for help, then get offended when we try to provide it the responsible way. Is that what this is? I said. Responsible theft. Watch your tone, Dad snapped. No, Grandpa cut in, you watch your answers. Then he pulled out his wallet. It was thick, old, worn around the edges like something passed down. From it, he took a folded note. He unfolded it carefully and read the numbers aloud. The account I've been sending the money to. Let's confirm it. He handed it to me. I stared at it. The number didn't match any account I'd ever seen in my name. Not my payroll account, not my savings, not even the closed one I had in college. Whose account is this? I asked. My mother didn't speak. Celeste, Grandpa said, his tone clipped. Who manages this account? She straightened, but her voice faltered for the first time. It arrives monthly. Regular as clockwork, she muttered. That was it. That was the mistake. The way she said it. She didn't say Caius told me. She said it like someone who had seen the deposits herself. You've been watching the deposits, I said. You knew the schedule. You didn't hear about it. You lived it. Dad jumped in. This isn't about who saw what. This is about timing. There were months Beckett needed capital. We had to. He stopped too late. Needed capital. Grandpa asked. What does that mean? Dad looked like a man who just realized he left the front door unlocked during a storm. Just to get through the runway, he said softly. The early stages. Runway, Grandpa repeated. You used my money meant for Caius to fund Beckett's startup. There it was. I thought the family backed me, Beckett said, suddenly stepping in. His face was pale, but his voice was too polished, like he didn't fully understand how wrong the optics were. I was told everything was in support of the legacy. Legacy. I remembered every smug smile. Every quiet, don't worry about it he threw at me when I asked how he paid for his downtown apartment, or those Italian shoes he never scuffed. Every time he said, the family's got me. Now I saw the pieces snap into place. You used me, I said, staring at all of them. You made me look like a screw-up so you could justify taking what was mine. You let me beg for help while you played savior to him. Don't be dramatic, Celeste said again. No, Grandpa interrupted. Don't be deceitful. He stood again, slower this time, older somehow, as if the truth weighed him down. This is theft, he said, no longer hiding his rage. And it's betrayal. Not just of Caius, of me, of everything I built. The room cracked. One uncle cleared his throat and looked away. A cousin whispered something to her husband. Jolene's smile had vanished entirely. Some of the guests, those who weren't blood, were visibly uncomfortable now, sensing the shift. Where's the proof? I asked, turning toward Celeste and Dorian. You say I forgot. Show me the receipts, the bank notices, the emails. We don't keep those on hand, Celeste said quickly. It's all on the desktop in my study. How convenient, I replied. We'll retrieve it, Dorian said. Later. No, Grandpa said. Now. When no one moved, he tapped his cane again. Not gently this time. After this dinner, I'll be calling my attorneys and my bank. Every transfer, every account will be reviewed. And if I find any of you have lied, you'll answer for it. Then he looked at me. Really looked. For the first time, not with pity or doubt, but something bordering on pride. You no longer need anyone's permission to speak the truth, Caius. And I saw it just for a flicker in my mother's eyes panic, not at being exposed, but at losing the story she worked so hard to control. The night air felt colder than it should have in Phoenix. I stepped out onto the patio, the tension still clinging to my skin like sweat. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until the first one came out shaky, shallow. The lights from the house poured through the tall windows behind me, golden and warm. But the warmth stopped at the glass. Inside, the people I called family were staring at each other like strangers. Outside, I stood alone, wondering how long they'd been lying to me. I heard the cane tap before I saw him. Grandpa Thaddeus moved with the slow grace of someone who never wasted motion. He stopped beside me, not speaking right away. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was charged. It was honest. "I should have checked," he said finally. "You could have called," I said, voice tight. He nodded once heavy with something that looked like regret. "I trusted them. Thought they'd do right by you." I didn't answer. What could I say? I'd spent years thinking the problem was me. Now I realized I was just the excuse they used to build a story that fit their needs. "I'm not asking for an apology," I said. "I just want this to stop happening." He looked at me, then really looked, and said, "I'm not going to fix this with words, Caius. I'll fix it with action." The next morning, I was sitting in a leather chair that squeaked every time I shifted. Across from me was Nolan Pierce, a lawyer with salt and pepper hair and a stare that cut through pretense like a blade. Grandpa sat beside me, quiet but alert. He hadn't brought Celeste or Dorian. This meeting wasn't for them. "Bring your ID, your bank info, anything tied to your finances," Grandpa had said over the phone. "We're going to see just how deep this hole goes." I did. What we found started shallow, then dropped into something cavernous. "There's a bank account in your name," Nolan said, sliding a file across the desk. I opened it. There was my name, my social security number, my old college address. But the account number, I'd never seen it. "I've never touched this account," I said. "That's because you couldn't," he said. "It was opened with you as the primary holder, but your mother is listed as co-owner. She has full access. So does your father. How is that legal?" "You were a student at the time. It's legal if they signed as financial guardians or if the bank didn't flag it. You probably never knew it existed." I looked at the printouts. Monthly deposits. Every first of the month. $5,000. And then within 24 hours withdrawals, always nearly the same amount sent to a company account. The company account belonged to Beckett's startup. They hadn't stolen the money once. They'd built a system, a machine, and I'd been the name tag pasted over it. Nolan flipped to another page. "Your grandfather started requesting verification statements every few months. Your parents always responded that you asked for privacy, that you didn't want contact, said you were overwhelmed." "That's not true," I said. "They ghosted me." He handed me a folder. He kept records, handwritten notes. Each time they replied, he logged it. The betrayal sat in my gut like sour milk. They hadn't just redirected the money. They'd rewritten the story of who I was. To my own grandfather. My phone buzzed. It was Aunt Jolene. "I'm sorry," her message read. "I believed them when they said you were unstable. I didn't know they were lying. I'm so sorry." That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just about theft. It was a narrative war. They painted me as unstable to justify holding power over me. Over the next 2 days, the dominoes started falling. Someone from my mom's country club texted, "Is it true your son's struggling mentally?" Dad got a call from a board he sat on. They asked him to step back temporarily. A reporter reached out anonymously to Beckett's startup asking about personal financing practices. Grandpa wasn't subtle. He held a closed-door meeting with longtime associates, allies, and friends. He told them the truth, not the emotional version, not the spin. Just the data, the account, the withdrawals, the falsehoods. I spent hours at home compiling a timeline. Rent due dates, times I'd texted Mom for help. Her replies, "You need to grow up, Caius. You always make everything dramatic." I matched them to the bank activity. Month after month, the same cycle. I suffered while they redirected money meant for me. And they all looked me in the eye and called me irrational. I downloaded voicemails, saved texts, even dug out an old email exchange where Celeste had scolded me for thinking the world owed me. The more I looked, the more I realized I had let them own the narrative. Not anymore. When I returned to Nolan's office, he reviewed everything and nodded. We have enough to pursue legal action for misappropriation. More than enough to call for restructuring the trust. Grandpa added, "We're not waiting." He planned to meet with the family's key financial partners, Beckett's investors, Dorian's clients, and lay it all out. Within 48 hours, he said. It was no longer a family feud. It was a reckoning. And they wouldn't walk away from it untouched. A week later, the calls came like clockwork. First it was Celeste. Multiple voicemails. Her voice danced between fury and fragility. "Caius, please. We need to talk. This isn't how you handle things. We can fix this quietly. You're hurting your father. You're hurting yourself." Then Dad. No pretense, just cold demands. "End this. Now. You're ruining our name. You're making us look like fools." Beckett started his campaign next. He posted cryptic quotes about envy and entitlement on his social media. People in his circle whispered about how I'd come for the money after being left out of the success. Maris posted a video in her kitchen making tea and talking about emotional vampires and families and how some people just want to see you fail. Not once did she say my name. She didn't have to. But the stories weren't sticking. Not this time. Grandpa moved fast. He began meeting with the family's most influential partners. The message was clear: he was correcting an internal error. He shared documents, paper trails, no feelings, just facts. Then came something I didn't expect. A former intern at Beckett's startup reached out to me. He'd overheard Beckett bragging months ago. "Don't worry, man. Family money comes in like clockwork. We're covered." It was enough to destroy the lie that Beckett didn't know. He knew, at least part of it. And he used it. Celeste and Dorian tried one last move. A buyout. "We'll transfer 10 grand to you," Dorian said over the phone. "You tell your grandfather it was all a miscommunication. Everyone wins." I didn't reply. They weren't sorry. They were cornered. Then I got a call from my building manager. "Your mother called. Said you might be having an emotional crisis. That we should keep an eye on you. They were trying to discredit me. If the story couldn't be stopped, it could be smeared, erased, drowned in doubt." Nolan didn't flinch. "They're trying to shake your credibility. That means we're close." Grandpa made the next move. He froze all access Celeste and Dorian had to any account with my name on it. He established a new trust under legal supervision with me as sole beneficiary. "I should have done this sooner," he said. Then he called for a family meeting. We gathered in his study. Me, Grandpa, Celeste, Dorian, Beckett, no one else. Dad looked exhausted. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "This isn't just about money," he said. "You're tearing this family apart." I kept my voice steady. "This is about truth. You didn't tear the family apart when you took what wasn't yours." Celeste's eyes were red. She tried the guilt again. "You're not a victim, Caius. You're our son." I laid out the timeline. The missed rent, the ignored messages, the deposits they took, the withdrawals, the voice messages, the quotes, the proof. Beckett tried too. "We're brothers. We're not equals," I said. "Not in your eyes. I was just a shell account to you." They had no answer. That week, a major investor pulled out from Beckett's company, citing concerns over financial ethics. My father was quietly asked to resign from a charitable board. My mother stopped being tagged in brunch photos. It was happening, and then Grandpa said it. "I've rewritten the will. In 24 hours, it's official. The assets will be restructured. The beneficiaries adjusted. Caius, you'll receive what you should have had. The rest gone." No one spoke. No one moved. There was no going back now. The meeting room was too quiet, too cold. Everything about it felt like judgment. I sat at the end of a polished glass table in Nolan Pierce's downtown office, my palms flat against my thighs. Across from me, my grandfather Thaddeus looked composed, bordering on regal, his spine straight. Despite his age, his gaze sharp. A stack of legal folders lay unopened in front of him. He hadn't spoken much since we walked in. He didn't have to. Nolan handled the logistics, laying out the documentation with the precision of a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. Today, Nolan began flipping open the top folder, is not a reconciliation. It's a reallocation of control. I nodded. I was ready. More ready than I had ever been. My ID was photocopied, the banking credentials updated. Nolan slid a sleek new debit card across the table. It gleamed under the overhead lights like a ceremonial sword. From this point forward, he said, you are the sole legal operator of all financial instruments previously allocated in your name. No one else has access, not even as co-signers. My chest loosened. It was the first breath I'd taken in years that didn't feel like it came with strings. The door opened. Celeste, Dorian, and Beckett entered together as if the three of them still believed that arriving in formation meant strength. Beckett wore a suit that looked freshly tailored. My mother had pearls around her neck. My father adjusted his cufflinks like he was headed to a gala, not a reckoning. "What is this, Thaddeus?" my mother asked, her voice light but brittle. Grandfather didn't answer immediately. Nolan did. "We are restructuring Mr. Caius Rowe's financial standing and protections pursuant to new evidence." "This is absurd," Beckett said, laughing once. "You really think he's capable of managing that money?" I didn't flinch. "I thought you said you never touched it," I said quietly. Beckett opened his mouth, then closed it. Nolan tapped the folder. "Shall we begin?" The presentation started with bank records. Page after page showing $5,000 deposits on the first of every month consistently for 28 months. All of it sent by Thaddeus. All of it withdrawn or redirected within 24 hours. Most marked for startup operational needs or seed capital. Names tied to Beckett, accounts tied to my parents. These accounts were opened under Mr. Caius Rowe's name, Nolan continued. However, dual authorization was granted to Dorian and Celeste Rowe. "He was 22 when we did that," Celeste snapped. "It was to help him. But he never had access, not once." My father's mouth twitched. "We just needed it to help Beckett's runway," he said. "It wasn't supposed to be forever. Forever. You mean while I was nearly evicted 3 times, while I ate canned beans for dinner and borrowed money to fix my brakes?" They had no answer. Beckett folded his arms. "This is still just money. You're acting like it's betrayal." Thaddeus finally spoke. "Because it is." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. "I'm restructuring the trust," he said. "Effective today, Caius will receive direct control over his share. Beckett, Dorian, Celeste, you are hereby removed from all future benefit." "You can't do that," Celeste said, rising. "I just did." Beckett stood up too, voice rising. "You're destroying this family." "No," I said. "You already did. I'm just turning on the lights." The documents were signed. Legal witnesses stepped in. Nolan handed me a folder marked with my name. "Your accounts, your investments, your authority. You answer to no one." I left before they did. Walked past their glares, their stunned silence. Outside, the heat hit me like a truth I could finally withstand. I stood in the parking lot, folder clutched to my chest, and looked up at the wide Arizona sky. Thaddeus joined me minutes later. He didn't say much, just rested his hand on my shoulder. "This was never about giving you power," he said. "It was about giving you back what's always been yours." I nodded. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stood there, breathing on my own. The silence after war is its own kind of noise. My phone buzzed for 3 days straight, messages from cousins, old family friends, a few former co-workers. Most didn't say much, just, "I didn't know," or "I'm sorry I believed them." One came from Aunt Jolene. "I should have spoken up when they started calling you unstable. I knew it wasn't true." Beckett lost 3 major contracts within a week. Investors asked for audits. His polished image began to flake under pressure. Maris deleted her socials for a few days, then came back with a cryptic quote about loyalty and envy. I didn't respond. I didn't post anything. Not because I was noble, because I was done giving them anything. My mother tried calling twice, left voicemails that started tearful and ended angry. Dad sent one long email, full of half apologies and veiled threats about legacy. Then Beckett showed up. He knocked on the door of my apartment in Tempe. I didn't invite him in. He stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, not looking like himself for once. "Look," he said, "I messed up, but we can fix this." "Fix what?" "Split what you got. Give me a portion. I'll pay it back in time." "You still don't get it." "It was a misunderstanding. Families survive worse." I shut the door. That night I got a text from someone in my old building. "Hey, just so you know, your mom asked our landlord about you a few months ago. Said she was worried you were unstable." Unstable. The same script, the same weapon. They hadn't just taken money. They tried to take away the only thing a man truly owns: his word. A week later, Thaddeus called me to his house. No lawyers, no documents, just us. He handed me a worn leather ledger. "This," he said, "was where I started. Every dollar, every risk, every failure." Inside were pages of numbers, scribbled notes, ideas, ethics. "Don't be a custodian of money," he said. "Be a builder." I started small, a modest office in downtown Phoenix. I enrolled in certification courses, studied every regulation, every tax code I had ignored when my life was about survival. 6 months in, I had 5 clients, then 10, then a junior associate. Everything was transparent. No shared accounts, no proxies, just earned trust. The house I grew up in went on the market. I bought it, cash, gave them 90 days to vacate. I never stepped foot inside. Some doors aren't meant to be opened again. Mom sent one letter, handwritten. No excuses, just a line. I chose what was easy. "I'm sorry for making you carry it." I didn't reply. I placed it in a drawer with a photo of me as a boy and the ledger Thaddeus gave me.